In any team sport, more specifically football, it's always important that a team establishes an identity, whether it be your quarterback, your run game, and in this case, the defense. The Giants have been known at some point in those three categories for their entire existence. But usually when you think of the New York Giants, you think of that front seven, you think of the defense. And I've got a feeling the Giants are starting to find their identity again. What is going on, guys? What's going on, 27 Squad? Welcome back into another video. If you guys are enjoying the content, make sure, as always, you guys hit that like button and subscribe for more content just like this. We have news just came out that the Giants are back on Hard Knocks. That's right. They are going to be on the in-season Hard Knocks edition when they cover an entire division, in this case, the NFC East. So 2 years in a row, the Giants will be featured on Hard Knocks. Hopefully this is a lot better than the first time around. I don't think they did the offseason this year. I think they kind of scrapped that with how bad it went for the Giants. But this time, we're back at it in season. I can't wait to see how the Giants interact with this new team, this roster, and how they go about this tough schedule. We don't really need to dwell too much on 2024. Everybody knows what happened, but it is important to kind of go over what happened in 2024, more specifically with the defense, if we want to look toward the future in 2025 and years beyond even, and look at the dramatic change that the defense has made and what the possible results are from it. Now, last year was a defense that tried to establish some sort of identity, more so with the front seven and that defensive line. The Giants traded for Brian Burns. It was a big blockbuster trade that kind of shook the NFL. Honestly, he had a really good year, 8.5 sacks and 17 tackles for loss in 2024, which nobody even came close to that. But the Giants had a really big problem with that front seven. It was stopping the run. Although the Giants were 8th in passing yards, those numbers are kind of skewed because the Giants could not stop the run. They were 27th in rush defense in 2024. They were allowing everything between the tackles, and even when especially when Dexter Lawrence was pulled off the field, whether it be injury or just in rotation, nobody was able to fill the shoes that Dexter Lawrence had in the middle. Teams ran up and down the field on the Giants, even teams like the Washington Commanders, who struggled running the ball all year in 2024, really had success versus the Giants. And when it comes to establishing an identity, a lot of things can hold you back from that. The Giants actually started really well as far as rushing the passer, and as far as sacks goes, they were on pace to breaking the 1984 record set by the Chicago Bears with 72 sacks in a single season. They were on pace to break that with 35 sacks through the first 8 weeks of the season. The rest of the season, they only had 10 sacks after that. This came from a lot of things, whether it be just the lack of creativity from the defensive coordinator and play calling with a lot of four-man rushes, or just plain old injuries. Dexter Lawrence had some time away. He got on IR the last couple of weeks of the season. Kayvon Thibodeau went on IR for a little bit early on in the season. Then right after that, Azeez Ojulari, who was filling in for Kayvon Thibodeau, got hurt. The only kind of common denominator there was Brian Burns. And even though they had 45 sacks, that ranked 8th in the NFL last year. That's still really good, but they could have had so much more if it wasn't for the offense. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about the offense in this video because we just don't have the time for that. I'm going to make a separate video talking about the offense, but this is just primarily the defense. But it is fair to note that the offense not being able to score and scoring like 12 points per game really held back from the defense as far as, starting field position and just plain old fatigue of constantly being on the field and not being able to get off the field on third down, which really leads me to not only not being able to stop the run, but the secondary, the passing secondary. The secondary for the Giants in 2024 was one of the youngest in the NFL. The only player that was not on rookie contract was Jason Pinnock and Adoree Jackson, who they picked up literally right before the season started. So there were plenty of problems with that defense that didn't allow them to really flourish and really kind of hit their stride and become what everybody thought they would. And like, everybody was very excited about the addition of Brian Burns, throwing him in there with Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence started the season with 9.5 sacks through like the first at least 7 or 8 weeks in the season. Like, he was on an absolute tear, a potential defensive player of the year candidate, but he just fell off the face of the planet because the rest of the defense just wasn't able to complement him. So let's start right there. Let's start with the front seven, and more specifically the edge rushing group. Now, this group is even better than the group that we put out last year in 2024. Again, big addition was Brian Burns, and you had Kayvon Thibodeau there as the 2 edge rushers, and behind them just wasn't a lot. You had Azeez Ojulari, who is good in rotation but finds himself off the field more so than on it. And then after that, we had Boogie Basham, who was supposed to be that prototypical, edge setting sort of defensive end that, you would have for a specific role, like we have for Jihad Ward or O'Shane Ximenez. These guys are just there to set the edge and help stop the run, but even he wasn't great. They got rid of him, and then you have Timon Fox, Benton Whitley. Like, these guys are just not good. So you can say the group was very top heavy, which was a very common theme for the 2024 defense for the Giants, where you had a lot of good players starting, but in case those players weren't able to go, the depth was just very lackluster. I mentioned earlier that Kayvon Thibodeau hit IR at the end of week 5, and then when he came back somewhere around, I think, November or something like that, Azeez Ojulari literally went on IR right after that. So the Giants just didn't have any continuity, and the depth there to start was just not great. And even looking at the defensive interior, it was just Dexter Lawrence. I'm sorry, Nacho wasn't very good, and when Dexter Lawrence was off the field and we tried to get some sort of nose tackle play without Dex, you had DJ Davis and Jordan Riley. These guys are just not that good either. So it sucked. You had to have your starters out there to really make a difference, and that's just impossible in the NFL. Now, I really love what the Giants did in 2025, adding some key additions. Let's start with the edge rushing group. Of course, we got to talk about Abdul Carter, the 3rd overall pick that the Giants made. I mean, just a fantastic addition to the defense. I know a lot of people were talking about, how that conflicts with Kayvon Thibodeau being on the team. But when you have a guy like Abdul Carter, and he is not the only guy in your edge rushing group, you're able to use him in so much other ways. Again, he has played off-ball linebacker, and he has more experience at off-ball linebacker, and he transitioned to edge rusher in 2024. He still has a lot to learn as an edge rusher, but it gives you the versatility to move him wherever you need him instead of just putting him at edge rusher and not having any depth after that. Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, they're going to be in really good rotation with Abdul Carter, and they're able to flourish that way. Shane Bowen was really restricted in what he, I guess, wanted to do. He is known for 4-man rushes, very basic defenses, but it's not like if he wanted to be creative, there was much to work with last year because there just wasn't good depth. There wasn't a good rotation of guys that can do a lot of different things. With the addition of Abdul Carter, it allows you to do so much more that even if you weren't as creative of a defensive coordinator, it now puts you in position to do just that. Just be creative. I firmly believe Abdul Carter can reach like 8 to 9 sacks in his rookie season, maybe even more than that, depending on how much time he gets as an edge rusher. But I really suspect him against teams like Jaden Daniels, any other teams that the Giants have to play that have a real good dual threat quarterback. I fully expect him to be more so of a spy type player because we look at our linebacking core. Micah McFadden's good, Bobby Okereke's good, but if you look at straight up explosiveness, speed, being able to track and pursue, I'm going to give that to Abdul Carter. Also, Chauncey Golston, the Giants are just filling out their needs, everything that they need. They're filling out their roles. I mentioned earlier how the Giants needed that Jihad Ward type player. Now, I'm not saying Jihad Ward was an amazing player, but a guy like him is needed on the defense to help set the edge. Kayvon Thibodeaux is good as far as playing the strong side edge role and, getting through tight ends, stopping the run, but you need a designated edge setting defensive end, and Chauncey Golston does just that. He's able to line up outside as a 5-tech, and you can even throw him inside at the 3 and have him rush the passer from the inside and maybe even stop the run, but you would definitely use him more to help, with a pass rush. And speaking of the interior, more additions that the Giants made. With the free agency class, the Giants added much more veterans in there to help out because, like we mentioned before, DJ Davidson, Jordan Riley, even Elijah Chapman, as much as we love him as a UDFA guy, a walk-on, he's smaller, he can stunt for you, he can provide some sneaky pass rush, but it's just not good enough. The Giants have to add some veteran presence in there to help out Dexter Lawrence, and in addition to Nacho, who we already had, the Giants added Roy Robertson Harris, a veteran defensive tackle, and Jeremiah Ledbetter. So these guys are going to be in rotation to help out Dexter Lawrence, and most notably, the Giants' 3rd round draft pick, Darius Alexander, who I project to be the starter alongside Dexter Lawrence, I think is going to provide a huge impact. So if we kind of just look at the defensive line as a whole, you're going to have a great rotation with Brian Burns, Kayvon, Chauncey Golston, and even Abdul Carter if he's lined up as an edge. And you're going to have a great rotation there alongside Dexter Lawrence at the nose and Darius Alexander at the 3, and him not having to be on the field at all times. We have a good rotation of veteran players in there if they needed to take Darius Alexander out for whatever reason that is. The Giants have good depth in there. That is a scary defensive line. Darius Alexander, I don't need to go into a whole scouting report on him. I'm sure you guys know so much about him already, but he's a guy that has upside as a pass rushing defensive interior and posted up very well as a run defender at his time in college. So I think he's a perfect fit next to Dexter Lawrence, and just explosiveness all around that defensive line. Moving on to the secondary, I'm extremely excited about what the secondary is going to look like in 2025. The Giants went in 2024, I mentioned before, as one of the youngest, if not the youngest, defensive back rooms in the NFL. I told you the only players that were not on rookie contracts were Jason Pinnock, and I don't even think he played all that much. And also you have Adoree Jackson. And when you have a young secondary group, you would like to think they all ball out, but secondary is one of the hardest positions to play, especially cornerback, one of the hardest positions to play as a rookie or second-year player, facing up against really top quality wide receivers and quarterbacks that know how to abuse you. Tay Banks, going into his second year as a pro, just struggled. He kind of was the guy to line up against number 1 receivers now, where it was his turn as a former first round pick to line up versus higher quality receivers, and it just did not bode well. Adoree Jackson, they tried to see what they can do with Adoree, and it just wasn't working out. Adoree just isn't the player he was a couple of years ago. Then you had guys like Cordell Flott, where a lot of people, there's a fan base of Cordell Flott. They like him. He's just not enough. He's a depth player. He should never be starting for you at all. You had Drew Phillips and Tyler Nubin, the 2 rookies that the Giants drafted in that year. Drew Phillips played slot corner. Tyler Nubin played strong safety. And listen, Drew Phillips was great as far as being a cover guy, a really good tackler, right? He was excellent in tackling in the run game, and guys that were able to slip out to the second level. He was able to catch up with them and get the tackle. But as far as being just a straight up pass defender, just wasn't great. If you look at Tyler Nubin and Drew Phillips combined, they only had 2 passes defense, and they had a lot of playing time between those two. It just wasn't great. Tyler Nubin was allowing everything. He just wasn't quick enough to get to the receivers. It was just a struggle. And that's what happens when you really lean on a lot of young talent in the secondary. You're going to get guys that struggle who are very talented, but just not experienced enough. Now with Tay Banks going into his 3rd season and the 2 rookies from last season going into their 2nd, there's now more experience with those guys, and the Giants also brought in some key pieces to help out in the secondary, like my favorite free agent signing, I think, this year, Paulson Adebo, the corner from the Saints. Man corner, extremely aggressive. He's one of the best man corners in the NFL right now, and with being a man corner, you're gonna take some risks, and you're gonna have some won battles, and you're gonna have some lost battles as well. But as you guys know, he broke his leg last season in 2024 after playing 7 games, but in those 7 games, he had 10 passes defensed and 3 interceptions. He was on an absolute tear before suffering his injury, and I'm not too worried about his injury going into his time with the Giants. It's a leg injury. It was a bone injury. So those of you that are very concerned, bones tend to heal a lot better than tendons, muscles, and ACL tears and stuff like that. They are very, very much recoverable than those type of injuries. And then the next key addition that the Giants made, Javon Holland, very versatile safety that literally lined up everywhere in his time with Miami. He had a bit of a down year the past 2 years, I'll be completely honest, but if you watch him on film, he's exactly what the Giants need in that secondary, man. We need guys that are able to move around, play in the slot, play as a center fielder. Like, we don't have a center fielder. He's able to do everything that a safety is kind of required to do, or a safety is capable of doing. He can do it. The Giants need that in the back end of their defense. And I say them for last because not much has changed with this group, but I think they can play a lot better in 2025, and that's the linebacker group with Bobby Okereke and Micah McFadden. These 2 players first came together in 2023 when Bobby Okereke was signed to the Giants, and Bobby had a really good season, and Micah had was a great compliment to Bobby Okereke. But we really saw last season where Bobby Okereke's play wasn't that up to par as we saw from a year prior, but Micah McFadden really played extremely well. Had 3 sacks, led the team in tackles with 107. Like, he was really good as well. That tandem right there can play even better in 2025 when you have a stronger defensive line, because you're asking less of those linebackers to really disrupt those gaps and stop the run, or get to the quarterback, or even in pass defense, you're having them back there a lot for a lot less time. Because linebackers are very easily abused in the passing game. They're not as swifty and able to move around like safeties and corners. So the middle of the field is always able to be exposed with like over 3 seconds of a quarterback having a ball. But if you had the defensive line that the Giants have and they remain healthy, you are going to get to the passer, and it's going to look a lot better for the linebackers, where there's going to be a weight lifted off their shoulders, where they don't need to really be a problem or a liability in the back end against the pass, and they can really focus on manning up on those tight ends, slot defenders, and of course getting after the passer and the running back. Looking at this defense as a whole and looking at how it looked like in 2024 is a huge dramatic difference. And even in 2024, the Giants, as far as a points per game sort of look at it, they really weren't terrible. And I told you already that they were on pace to break the single season sack record through the first 8 weeks of the season. Like, they were on a tear, but it was the lack of offense, the lack of of consistency and the lack of creativity from that defense that was really their downfall. I think the only thing that can keep the Giants from getting to where they want to be defensively and establishing their identity is going to be, one, injuries, of course, that's always something you have to talk about, and two, Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator. He's had great years with Tennessee, but there's always been a lack of creativity when it came to Shane Bowen that was really his downfall. I'm hoping that when you have the additions that you have now this year and the much better depth that you have this year, things will change and things will get better. So I really think the Giants, with their defense, has established their identity and what they want to be this year as a tough, defensive-minded team that is going to use their defense to win games in 2025 and years beyond. And then hopefully the offense can catch up and we'll be there with the offense as well. But that is it. That's all I have for you guys today. Make sure you guys leave a like if you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and we have more content, especially covering OTAs in the very near future. That being said, I am KB, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Woo!